Good evening, South Africa, and welcome to Sunday Live right here on SABC 1. I am your host, Tumelo Mututwane. Well, the month of March marks Human Rights Month in South Africa, and the President has declared that Human Rights Day, observed on the 21st of March 2016, be commemorated as the National Day Against Racism. Well, the year 2015 and 2016 have also seen tertiary students seek transformation in the academic language policy, as well as eradicating racism on campus, amongst other issues. Now, on Sunday Live, we find out how young people celebrate Human Rights Day and whether they have a clear understanding of their constitutional rights. Well, our poll question to you this evening as well is, do young people practice the responsibilities that come with having rights? We'll engage on our social media pages on Facebook with Sunday Live on SABC 1. You can tweet at Sunday Live SABC 1 or T_Mututwane, of course, and hashtag Sunday Live SA. Now, unfortunately, we are not live tonight, so therefore we can't take your SMSs, but do make sure, we are live, however, but we're not taking your SMS rather, so do make sure you engage on Facebook and you don't actually just SMS. Now, let's get back to the gist of the program. In studio with us is Mduduzi Kanyile from Ikusasa Lethu Empowerment and Development Program, and we're also joined by Candace Mama, who's a young motivational speaker here to just motivate us and take us through, of course, having our rights and also our responsibilities. Now, moreover, we're also joined by a studio audience here to engage with us further on what they think about the poll question, what they think about tomorrow, commemorating Human Rights Day, and how far we've come 22 years into democracy. Well, let's get into our discussion. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. And welcome to you. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Well, let's start with you, Mduduzi. Now, you represent an organization, more of a youth empowerment and development program and organization. How far do you think we've come in observing young people's rights in the country, do you think?
Well, when you talk about rights, especially youth rights, I cannot say youth exclusively have a right or rights on their own, but they feed into the rights which we are offered in the Constitution. So when we say youth rights, we refer to policies that engage youth, or rather specific to youth, like the National Youth Policy and other policies, the Africa Youth Charter as well. But beyond that, we can't really specify to say that youth have a specific right on their own. So basically, we've come too far. We've come very far as South Africa in engaging the youth, especially with regards to development and participation as well, public participation, whether it's political or social. But I think the hardcore factor that needs to be looked at by government currently is the economic factor, because the youth are very marginalized, or they're perceived as marginalized in the economy. So they can't participate due to lack of jobs. Even qualified people don't have jobs anymore. They can't apply for jobs. So those are the challenges we're currently looking at. Not to say that we haven't made strides towards achieving something since 1994, but I think we have come a long way in higher education funding, etc., etc. So I think we've come a long way.
All right, then. Well, Candace, let's talk about the responsibilities that come with the rights. Do you feel that young people acknowledge and observe those responsibilities, and if so, what are they?
I think human rights overall, we need to understand that means equality. So all of us are in a space whereby we are expecting equal, whether it be to be treated equally as women, different races, etc. So I think the responsibilities that come with that is individual responsibility, and I think that's where a lot of people struggle, because we look at a collective system. So we look at the government and we're like, you should dictate to us, you should tell us what we need to do, instead of taking individual initiative to say, you know what, I don't like this, so I'm going to change it, and in this way, and not necessarily following a group mentality sometimes. And I think the responsibilities are, there's so many. So if I break it down into racial dynamics, when you come into contact with someone who is of a different race, and you decide to judge them immediately, you are in the wrong. That is not taking accountability, and that's not taking responsibility. If you turn around again that next day and be like, you know what, the country's changing, and, I can't stand, people are taking over.
Right.
I mean, you are someone who's just a blamer. You enjoy pointing fingers, you don't want to take responsibility, and you're not a part of the collective good, and you're not a part of progressing the country forward.
All right then. Well, Duduzi, you do know that today, regardless of us commemorating Human Rights Day tomorrow, also, today we're commemorating the Sharpeville massacre as well, since 1969, where, 69 people were killed and, 180 or so were also injured, including the Langa killings. But what was the role of young people in sort of bringing us to a day or a year, 2016, where all South Africans can have, basic human rights?
Well, the role of young people, as we know, since, we had a massacre as well in 1976, where an uprising, not a massacre, so to say.
Yeah.
But I think the role of young people was very influential, especially since it were the young people on the streets actually advocating for the government to change the kind of approach towards governing. So I think, young people were played a central role in that respect. And I'm kind of disappointed today to see that they don't even play a central role in policies that are created. We've got, as I said, the Africa Youth Charter, which also offers rights that already are there to the young people, because human rights is one perspective, but socio-economic rights is another different story, because I think that's where we're lacking as a society, not only as South Africa, but as Africa as well, to say that we do have human rights. We fought for the human rights, and we've achieved the human rights, and we are doing quite well. But what about the socio-economic rights? Unemployment, as I mentioned, health is another issue. You hear that sometimes people are denied access to their health based on the political party they support. So all those kind of things are problems that need to be addressed, and they won't just be addressed by policies or legislative structures or frameworks, but it will be addressed by a plan of action by the government. And the plan of action should obviously have the youth play a central role in the execution of that plan of action. Not only based on your political affiliation, as I said earlier on, but based on the desire to have youth participate in the economy. So I think that's it.
Okay, then, well, let's take a short break, and when we come back, we're engaging our audience members. We try and also just pick on their brains about what they think on the topic. Do they think that young people acknowledge and observe the responsibilities that come with their rights? Do we even understand what our human rights are, and do we understand what the responsibilities that are attached rather to those rights are? Well, I engage with our audience members, but only straight after this. Welcome back to Sunday Live right here on SABC 1. We are commemorating Human Rights Day tomorrow. And, of course, we do know that President Jacob Zuma has officially declared that tomorrow, the 21st of March, be a national day, rather, of course, observing and just as a country, a society, rallying against racism. We do know the spate of racism outbursts have, sort of like opened the country for us since 2016 began. And the president just came out saying that should be the day whereby we work towards being a non-racial, society. However, let me take it back to our audience members. I'm sure they're quite keen to share their views. What are your views, so to speak, when it comes to, Human Rights Day and, young people and how they commemorate the day? Anyone who would like to comment first? Yes, please.
Hi, yes. I feel that when it comes to Human Rights Day and how South Africans commemorate it, particularly with regard to the youth, something that's been overlooked is that Africa just has a kind of psychology based in ageism, that you need to be old and experienced to kind of understand this world. And I think Fees Must Fall was pivotal, because certainly within recent times, we've seen the youth get more involved in the decisions that affect them and how they affect them, and not actually just agree to be consequences for it. And not be the consequence of such decisions anymore.
Thank you so much for that point. Thank you. Anyone else would like to comment? Thank you. Anyone to comment, please?
Yes. When it comes to gender equality, we feel that, South Africa and Africa as a whole still needs to work on that, because we feel that I, as a young gay person, and I feel that, we're not accepted, and I think South Africa still needs to do a lot of work when it comes to that, and you actually become something that you're not. You tend to become a character that you're actually not. So I just feel that us as youth, we have to look at gender equality as well.
All right, thank you so much. Please just hold the mic close to your mouth when you're speaking so that you're audible, because we're struggling to get audio. But for the next person that's about to just answer there, you know, as we commemorate, you know, Human Rights Day tomorrow, 22 years, you know, after democracy, do you feel that, you know, our constitution, our country actually observes and respects the rights of young people?
My name is Mazen Skole. I'm the internal director at the Wits Debating Union. I really feel that in some instances, and this is where it gets really tricky, we sort of overlook other rights in the pursuit of certain rights. For example, we can see this in the UCT rape cases around Roads Must Fall. We can see this in Fees Must Fall, how it became intersectional around also gender equality issues and the representation of women in the struggle. And we see that a lot of the time, in the pursuit of certain rights, we overlook those that we feel are not as important to specific struggles. And a lot of the time, the intersectionality is extremely important in also just identifying where South Africa is, first of all, and secondly, where the struggle should be, not only around pivotal issues, but also secondary issues.
All right, thank you so much for that point. And just lastly, before I go to our panelists, anyone to sort of also comment on, you know, the responsibilities that come with our rights? Do you think we observe those enough? And if so, what exactly are those responsibilities that you think young people need to take into consideration when thinking about human rights? Anyone to comment at all? Any young person who has rights and wants to take responsibility for their rights? Thank you.
So I think to add to what he was saying, often when people are fighting, they fight for their own rights while forgetting about other people's rights. So again, with Fees Must Fall, you saw a specific right to free education being pushed again and again, and kind of cases of sexual assault, which have been prevalent in every single university, kind of being pushed aside because for now we're looking for the right to free education. It's the same with the LGBT community, it's the same with women's equality, that we often think, let's fight this fight for now and then forget about other people's rights until later.
All right, thank you so much for that comment. Well, let me take a call right now. Andile, you're all the way from Rustenburg, I understand. Welcome.
Yeah, hello, sis, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I'm all right. I believe that during the State of the Nation address, the president said that this day will be also known as the Day Against Racism.
Right.
So here in Corondal, we have a problem of racism. There is a Corondal just around Rustenburg, 7 kids away from Rustenburg. There is a school by the name of Tirelong Secondary School. And then when the kids are going to the school, there are 2 white guys who normally throw stones to those kids. And then there are 3 victims so far, and also 1 other lady who's cooking that who have been victim of this racism. So in other words, the whites are still having that racism, more especially those Afrikaners around there in Rustenburg.
Sure. Thank you so much for calling in and
Bye-bye.
also highlighting that issue in that area. Let me take it back to you, Mduduzi. I mean, I understand that you worked very closely, and I'm sure you still do, with you know, the Human Rights Institute. Take me through what sort of, you know, steps one needs to take if they feel that their rights, human rights, are violated.
Well, there is a body, or there are bodies in South Africa that deal specifically with human rights. We know that we've got the Human Rights Commission, which is right here in Braamfontein.
Right.
So it's as easy as lodging a complaint with the Human Rights Commission. And then the complaint will be investigated, and then correspondence will follow with you, the complainant. And certain repercussions will be taken, or certain recommendations will be taken to the Commission. And then after that, action will be taken on that particular, whether they press charges with the police. The thing with South Africans, Dumelo, is that as youth, especially youth, we are not aware of our rights. We hear this word being thrown around, rights, rights, rights. But we're not really empowered to claim our rights. And that's part of the government mandate that since, I'll make an example for you, in the African Union, the government signs certain treaties and certain instruments. So within that signing, says to you that the government says, well, we are promising to take these laws into our country. And then there's a ratification, you ratify to make sort of like a firm stance to say, we'll bring this into our country. And then you make it into law, and then you implement it, into policy, and then you implement it. So during those processes, the government has a duty to popularize those kind of rights that they bring. So in the Constitution as well, we've got rights. We've got human rights, we've got socio-economic rights, as I mentioned earlier, but they are not popularized. Some people still think whites are privileged in this country. So not having that information of how you go about, as you've asked me, in lodging a complaint against human rights violation is a key issue, I think, throughout the country.
All righty then. Well, let me take another caller all the way from Durban. Welcome to Sunday Live.
Hello?
Hi, welcome. Your comment, please.
Hello?
Hi, you're on Sunday Live?
How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Yeah.
Your comment, please, before we go to break.
Okay. Mina engikubonayo inkinga esinayo kwi-society yethu ukuthi these rights youth esinawo agcina eseclasha with irrespect and humanity within our societies because abayithatha ama-responsibilities. Umuntu uzohamba ingane ilale ngaphandle bese itshele umzali ukuthi hayi right okuyishaphi because i-right yayo ukuthi yenze noma yini. So I think I understand the responsibility which comes with i-rights as a youth. So
thank you so much for that comment. For that comment. Well, on that note, I have to take a short break, and when we come back, we also have, more engagements and more views that we'll be taking from our audience members. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Sunday Live. Well, if you've just joined us, unfortunately, we've come to the last segment of our show as we discuss Human Rights Day and commemorate the day tomorrow, and also look back as to where we come from 20 years, of course, before democracy. Now, Kenneth, I wanted to know, when we heard some of the outcries from our callers talking about, racism in the area, talking about, young people not necessarily observing their responsibilities. In your opinion, why do you think that someone would go out of their way to sort of violate another's human rights?
Wow, I mean, that is such a complex question, because you have to observe where we come from. We're only 22 years into democracy, and people tend to forget this. I mean, if you take the exact example of a 22-year-old, your mind is not exactly fully formed yet, so you'd compare that to the state of the country. And unfortunately, we've come to a place right now where the Fees Must Fall movement has actually set into motion these, I wouldn't say consequences, but the silent simmering that's been under the surface all of a sudden has come to the forefront. And I think it's time for us to address it and to deal with it head on and say, we won't tolerate. And there's a difference between freedom of speech and hate speech. And I think that's what a lot of people have been getting away with, and from what you say and articulate is how you're going to behave and act, And the more people that support that notion and that support your sentiments, they're also going to behave in the same manner. So as soon as they understand that there are repercussions to their actions, I believe that it will quiet down and we will address the issue more effectively.
All right, and going back to our audience members very briefly, I just wanted to know, as the President, of course, declared tomorrow as a day where, as a country, we all stand together against racism, how do you think as young people that can be achieved? Is it something that could happen overnight? How long will it take? How exactly do you think that can happen? Can we have the mic, please? Yeah.
As far as that is concerned, it's not something that can happen overnight. We as the South African youth very well know our rights, but don't practice our responsibilities. For example, you'll know that you have the right to food, but not the responsibility not to waste the food. The right to go to school, but not the responsibility to study. So I think it's something that will never happen overnight, that it's a collective effort, not just looking ahead on to the government.
Thank you so much for that. Let's just give the gentleman there. He raised his hand. Very briefly, please.
Yes, I was just wanting to speak to both of them about, I understand I wonder if sometimes you understand the frustration that black youth have, because, as a young black professional, I'm an attorney now. I have to give up my blackness to succeed. I have to speak English as though it's my first language. I have to give up my race, my religion. I have to sort of hide behind my suit and my tie. I can't be what I am. Whereas an English-speaking young South African, an Afrikaans-speaking young South African doesn't have to do that. And that creates a lot of tension, this Afrikaans must fall and all of that. I mean, how do we address that issue? That as a young black South African, I cannot be what I want to be. I can't be my Zulu, my Sotho, my what. And I won't succeed if I do that, and that's unfair.
Thank you very much for that good question. And as we close off, of course, please just answer for that one.
Well, I think self-consciousness as a black nation it goes a long way. And I raised this to me earlier on, that our rights are not popularized enough so that we can know them. We still think that white is still superior and we blacks are still, I don't know, inferior. And that creates the attitude in society, which is really, I think, intolerable. I wouldn't really tolerate that. So in short, in answering that question, I'd say that we shouldn't look at it from a top-bottom approach, where the government needs to sometimes feed us information. We ourselves need to take it upon ourselves, the initiative, to be out there and know that it's equal. I mean, we've got freedom, we've got rights such as equality, etc., etc. And we need to familiarize ourselves with those rights, because if you don't familiarize yourself with those rights, then you're gonna have a problem at the end of the day of not identifying yourself within certain facets of the society. Right. So I think cohesion, social cohesion, is about recognizing the differences that we've got. We've got a diverse society, but the diverseness that shouldn't stop us from being one nation as South Africans. So I think that's the crux of identifying this problem and solving it.
All right, thank you so much, Mduduzi. Well, we asked you a question: do you think that young people practice the responsibilities that come with their rights? Well, our poll results have come out, and it seems that 70% of our voters voted no, and 30% voted yes. All right, it seems like we still have a long way to go there. And I think tomorrow, as we, of course, commemorate Human Rights Day, we can just take that into consideration. Candace, when you hear, when you listen to those results, what do you think?
It's not shocking, unfortunately. I think I deal with a lot of youth, and I speak to a lot of youth. And sometimes I don't blame the youth. I think it's just misinformation. They don't get the proper information as to how to succeed and how to thrive. And unfortunately, their role models are celebrity figures, and those people aren't exactly leading them to the path of righteousness and morality. They're leading them down the quick money, quick everything, and so they're living in a very instant society. Whereas when you start informing them that look, you need to read a book, pick up a book. A book is not your enemy, and that's when you don't become as popular.
Alrighty then. Well, thank you so much, Candace Mama. Thank you for coming onto the show. Mduduzi Kanyile, thank you so much for your time as well. And to our audience members, thank you so much for making time to come to Sunday Live and discuss this very important issue. And thanks to you at home for joining us this evening. That's how we wrap up our show. But I'll see you again next weekend, Sunday, for my very last show right here on Sunday Live. I look forward to it. My name is Tumelo Mututwane. Until next Sunday, goodbye.